Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us at today's Salton community meeting. Um, we're just going to allow a minute or two for folks to continue to trickle in. If we can um, just wait a little bit and they see folks still coming in. So just wait. And if we can hit the next slide, please. Okay, just one more minute. Okay, so I think we are ready to get started. Thank you all for joining us at today's community meeting for the Community Needs Report, Solvency Management Program and Community Needs Report, and the Solvency and Community Needs and Recommended Actions Report. So thank you all for joining. Just briefly mention that today we have, as usual, interpretation is available on this Zoom webinar. You can choose that option at the bottom of your screen. You'll see that icon, the glove icon that says interpretation. Please select that glove and select your language of preference. Like I said, a Spanish interpretation is available. I also recommend or just to mention that we might get some comments in Spanish. So it might be a good idea to select the English language, as the interpreters will toggle in between languages. So select your language of preference. Um, and I'll be repeating the same thing in Spanish. La interpretación en español hoy está disponible para quienes necesiten traducción al español. Y esta opción la puedes seleccionar en la parte de abajo, en el menú que tiene en la parte inferior de su pantalla de Zoom. Hay un icono de un círculo, un globo terráqueo, donde dice interpretación o interpretation. Ahí puedes seleccionar su lenguaje, ya sea inglés o español. En ocasiones podremos recibir pues, comentarios en español y le recomendaría seleccionar su lenguaje también para que lo escuche de la mejor manera. También puede hacer sus comentarios en español en la caja de preguntas y siéntese con la confianza de hacer sus comentarios completamente en español. If we can hit the next slide, please. Okay, so just some quick instructions over the Zoom webinar. We also have closed captioning available. You can select that at the bottom of your screen, clicking on the CC icon and select the closed caption option. We also have the Q&A question and answer box enabled. You can feel free to type in your questions in that Q&A box. We'll try to respond as we move on through our presentation. You can do that from the get-go of this meeting, and we'll address your questions through there. There will also be a public comment period at the tail end of this presentations and the end of this meeting, and there will also be a chance to raise your hand and make a comment there. On Zoom, you can raise your hand when the time comes by clicking the raise your hand feature at the bottom of your screen, and then we'll facilitate and get the hands up as we get them. So at this point, I'd like to bring it up to Assistant Secretary Samantha Arthur to help us kick off the meeting.
Thanks, Miguel. Hi, everyone, and welcome. Thanks for being here. My name is Samantha Arthur, and I'm Assistant Secretary for Salton Sea Policy at the California Natural Resources Agency. And I lead our Salton Sea Management Program, which is a collaboration of the California Natural Resources Agency, the Department of Water Resources, and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. And we have representatives from each of our entities here today for this webinar. Our team, the Salton Sea Management Program, is building 30,000 acres of restoration projects around the Salton Sea under our Phase 1 10-year plan. We have 6,000 acres of aquatic and vegetation enhancement projects that are currently under construction at the Salton Sea. As we've initiated and worked to scale up these projects, we've heard a call from community members for our team to understand community needs at the Salton Sea and look for where we can provide multiple benefits in our restoration projects. So we've carried out a public engagement project over the past 18 months that has led to our draft Salton Sea Management Program and Community Needs Report. This report was released in late January for a 60-day comment period, and that comment period goes until March 26th. Our report describes Salton Sea community needs gathered from community feedback. It describes our Salton Sea Management Program's current efforts related to those needs and identifies opportunities where we can provide co-benefits in our restoration work as additional funding and capacity becomes available. We worked with Better World Group advisors in this engagement effort and asked them to capture and uplift needs and recommendations that may have been broader than restoration or outside the scope of the Salton Sea Management Program. During this public comment period on our draft report, we have held 2 in-person workshops just last night and the night before in Mecca and Salton City. And we were able to be together in person after COVID-19, and so it was great to be back in the community and working in person. And in a workshop format, we were able to break out into working groups and have great discussion and solicit feedback on the community needs and our potential actions. We heard some great feedback, things like a desire for trails and bike paths, for shade structures. We heard a lot of interest about education and connecting youth to career pathways and restoration. We are doing a webinar here today to be as accessible as possible and hosting a virtual meeting, and we'll present the summaries of the broader community needs report authored by Better World Group advisors. And then we'll present the Salton Sea Management Program and Community Needs Report, which focuses on our restoration program and potential for multiple benefits. We've got the Q&A box that Miguel mentioned, and so we'll take some questions there and answer questions through Q&A, and then we'll open up for public comment period. So thanks so much for being here. We look forward to hearing from you, and I'm going to start by passing it over to Cecilia Estolano from Better World Group Advisors.
Thanks, Samantha. This is Cecilia Estolano with Better World Group. We produced this Salton Sea Community Needs and Recommended Actions report. We did the research on it and did quite a bit of community engagement and outreach to produce it. Let's talk about what this report's purpose is. The purpose of the report is to highlight the broad and persistent needs in the Salton Sea shoreline communities. Next slide, please. First, let's talk a little bit about how we define those communities. We define the shoreline communities to be rural and unincorporated shoreline and near shore communities that will be most affected by the shrinking of the Salton Sea. And you'll see these include in the Eastern Coachella Valley and as well as the Imperial County area. The needs and the recommendations in this document do not necessarily only pertain to what the California Natural Resources Agency or the Salton Sea Management Plan can accomplish, as Deputy Secretary Arthur mentioned. The purpose of this report is to look across all the variety of engagement that's been done over a variety of a number of processes and over a number of years, and condense that into a fairly comprehensive and well-organized assessment of the needs of the community. But many of the recommendations we've made on the basis of that needs assessment fall outside the purview of the California Natural Resources Agency and outside the SSMP's restoration charge. These broader needs, though, need to be addressed in order to create healthy and thriving communities at the sea. This document is really intended to be a roadmap for communities and needs and solutions that are focused recommendations that philanthropy, a variety of agencies can pick up and run with, even beyond CNRA. We hope that these recommendations can help community members, public agencies, philanthropic organizations leverage their various funding programs and opportunities to really drive good, positive change in this area. Let's go to the next slide. So how did we do it? Well, these needs and recommendations in the report are rooted in feedback provided by local community members and by a document review. Our recommendations are either pulled directly from community input that took place over the last 18 months, or they were based on the research we did. You'll see a summary of the type of research we did. We reviewed over 65 reports, papers, letters, surveys done by state and federal and local agencies for a variety of projects. We also interviewed over 70 regional experts one-on-one about the needs of the community. We also organized 5 topical focus groups that convened advocates and others working in the region to further understand the needs and possible solutions. And we also convened community workshops regarding the SSMP. There were also 3 intertribal focus groups with representatives from 7 regional tribes. And finally, community surveying and focus groups and other types of community activities were conducted by our partners, Concui Design Initiative, and by the Imperial Valley Justice and Equity Coalition and others. So that pulled all together a very rich amount of data and expressions of community needs that we then assembled and categorized and then used as a basis for developing recommendations. Next slides, please. So we compiled all these community needs and we grouped them thematically into these eight categories that you see here. They range from community engagement to transportation access to public health. Next slide. In addition to categorizing all of these community needs and organizing them in those 8 categories, we also wanted to provide takeaways to CNRA and others interested in this area that cut across all 8 of the categories of needs. So there really are 3 overarching takeaways that we noted. First is that investments in critical infrastructure in the Salton Sea shoreline communities are absolutely crucial. These are communities that need significant investment in critical infrastructure, things including safe and reliable drinking water, hospitals and public health resources, extreme heat mitigation and community protections, broadband internet. It ran the gamut, but significant investment needs to be made in critical infrastructure to improve the well-being in this community. Our second main takeaway is that the challenges facing this region go far beyond what only one agency can do. It's going to take increased regional collaboration from state, local, federal agencies, from community-based organizations, philanthropic organizations, together working to address some of these endemic, long-standing issues. We also noted that there are community residents and advocates who want to and have been active agents for change, and they have the expertise that is critical to centering their needs in planning and decision-making. They need to play a critical role, they continue to play a critical role, and they must be at the center at all planning and decision-making opportunities. And lastly, we wanted to note that we're really at this historic moment where there are state and federal funding opportunities, particularly in infrastructure, that really haven't existed before. And they align very, very nicely with the types of needs that we identified through this process. And so with that, we're happy to answer any questions at the end of this presentation, but hope you'll have a chance to review our report and let us know what you think. Thanks very much. Over to Mario.
Next slide, please. Great. Good afternoon. My name is Mario Llanos, Deputy Assistant Secretary for the California Natural Resources Agency, working here in the Salton Sea Management Program, or SSMP as we call it. Born and raised in Imperial County and currently based in the region. Thank you for taking time to be here and with us in this space to engage and provide critical feedback to this effort. Next slide. Today, I'll give a brief overview of the current challenges at the Salton Sea and the SSMP's restoration work at the Salton Sea. I'll provide a brief overview of the SSMP's roles in development of this community needs project and our development of the SSMP Community Needs Report. I'll highlight the 8 surface needs that Better World Group briefly discussed and how the SSMP is currently addressing those needs and how we propose expanding on our current efforts within our restoration projects with added capacity and funding. Finally, what's the ask? The SSMP would really like to receive valuable feedback on how to shape this effort and learn from all of you what is important to you and your community. Slide. So what are the challenges at the Salton Sea? We know that dust from the receding sea may be contributing to poor air quality and public health for surrounding communities. At over twice the salinity of the Pacific Ocean, we know that the sea is now unable to sustain most aquatic life like it once did. The Salton Sea is an important stop on the flyway for many migratory birds, and these habitat values are being lost. Finally, decades-long drought and water availability have reduced inflows to the sea, causing it to shrink. Next slide. So what's happening to improve these conditions? The Salton Sea Management Program was formed out of statute and is comprised of the California Natural Resources Agency, Department of Water Resources, and California Department of Fish and Wildlife. We are in the midst of our 10-year plan for near-term restoration, beginning in 2018 to implement 29,800 acres of dust suppression and habitat creation restoration projects by 2028. While we're behind in our acreage targets, in the last several years, we've made great progress and continue to add capacity. The SSMP has approximately 6,000 acres under construction. Approximately 2,500 acres have been completed or are adding interim dust suppression benefits. The map on this slide shows projects identified in our 10-year plan environmental assessment, either nearing the end of construction, under construction, or in planning or permitting for construction. Next slide. So what was the SSMP's role in developing the community needs reports? While we've made recent progress, there is much work ahead as we continue to ramp up our restoration efforts. About a year and a half ago, we embarked on a project to better understand community needs and pathways to incorporate these needs into our restoration goals. Better World Group detailed the research and many SSMP workshops that informed this effort. We continue to hear a call for greater needs in the region, such as vital public health infrastructure, transportation, and increased broadband services, and others outside of the realm of SSMP restoration efforts. This led to the Salton Sea Community Needs and Recommended Actions Report produced by Better World Group, as Cecilia outlined earlier. We wanted to uplift those greater needs in this commissioned Better World Group report and take what we heard to self-reflect on how we were doing and what more we can do to weave these 8 surface needs into our restoration efforts. This led to a second report, which is the Salton Sea Management Program and Community Needs Report, which clearly identifies pathways for integration into our restoration efforts. We're currently in the midst of a 60-day comment period on this report to understand what more we may do and to learn if we've missed anything. The comment period ends March 26th, and the purpose of this meeting is to provide the public with more information to receive valuable feedback on these reports. Next slide. In the next series of slides, I'll take a deeper dive in how the SSMP is currently integrating the 8 surface needs into our restoration work with added capacity and funding. We'll go through each need with a few examples from the report and will display a question for each need to help you think about what we might be missing or what more we can do. Feel free to write any suggestions in the Q&A box. Next slide. So number one, community engagement, capacity building, and coordination. This is a need this program has made great strides in over the last couple of years in leading an SSMP Community Engagement Committee comprised of local agencies, tribal representatives, community-based organizations, and other partners in the region. The SSMP Community Engagement Committee serves as a hub and primary venue to plan engagement activities and identify the best outreach and involvement strategies for SSMP public events or initiatives. With COVID-19 restrictions lifted, the SSMP has begun to host meetings in communities around the sea. This is especially important for those communities with unreliable or no broadband to participate in online meetings. We've increased our outreach efforts through varying communication channels like television ads, canvassing, and an increased social media presence. We presented at partner meetings and late last year began a roadshow presentation at various city council meetings in Imperial and Riverside counties. We continue to develop our SSMP materials in Spanish and include Spanish interpretation at public meetings like this one. Future opportunities include expanding public tours of projects, developing a project dashboard to communicate project details and current status of projects. And then also working with partner agencies to incorporate some of the same SSMP outreach strategies, just to name a few. Next slide. So just a question for, to get kind of the juices flowing here, but how can the SSMP better involve communities in engagement opportunities? Feel free to write, any feedback on these questions in the chat. Next question, or next slide, sorry. So number 2 is early, often, and meaningful tribal consultation. This is rooted in state policy and foundational to the SSMP. And rooted in state policy and foundational to the SSMP is early, often, and meaningful tribal consultation with respect to our restoration projects. The SSMP is committed to protecting tribal cultural resources at the sea. We've expanded the participation and inclusion of approximately 25 tribes with ancestral ties to the Salton Sea. We continue to work towards collaboration of projects around the sea. We continue to meet with tribes where they are to continue important dialogue in relation to Salton Sea restoration. Future opportunities include the potential to add SSMP specific tribal leads to our program, continue to explore ways to incorporate traditional ecological knowledge to improve tribal access to the sea, and to protect sacred sites and resources. We aim to increase tribal stewardship and youth programs at the sea, and currently something that we're discussing with tribes. We'd like to expand on tribal visits to SSMP restoration sites, and then continue to seek collaboration with tribes with ancestral connections to the Salton Sea on naming and renaming of restoration sites, just to name a few. Next slide. So how can the SSMP strengthen tribal partnerships and protect cultural sites and resources? Next slide. Equitable outdoor access and recreation at the sea is number 3. The SSMP is working to incorporate opportunities for outdoor access and recreation into its restoration projects where compatible with our dust suppression and habitat objectives at these project sites. This includes partner-led projects like the North Lake Pilot Demonstration Project, the Audubon Bombay Beach Wetland Project, and the Desert Shores Channel Restoration Projects, which all provide the potential for recreation and public access. We've begun to use the outdoor access and recreation as evaluation criteria for current and future restoration at the sea, as seen in our draft long-range plan for restoration at the sea. And you can see one of the renderings on this slide here as part of that long-range plan. Future opportunities include future coordination with agencies and partners to develop cohesiveness to recreational elements like trails, signage, and benches, just to name a few. Engaging early with landowners to learn their willingness to allow for these activities once restoration projects are constructed is something that we're currently doing and will continue to do. Develop interpretive signage for educational purposes in English and Spanish. And then finally, participate in partner-led regional efforts to provide more cohesion and meaningful outdoor and cultural experiences through enhanced signage and programming. Next slide. So what is needed to access and recreate at the sea? Next slide. Public health. Number 4, implementing projects that protect air quality for communities and create habitat is at the core of the SSMP's restoration projects in charge. While the SSMP does not have regulatory authority over the region's air and water quality, it does conduct monitoring as part of its work within restoration sites. We're using information gathered from partners and communities to prioritize placing dust suppression projects near impacted communities to protect air quality. We are currently working to update our SSMP website to include a resources tab where the public can learn more about air and water quality in the Salton Sea region. Future opportunities include continuing to prioritize our projects in the most known emissive areas to protect air quality. Develop and display easy to comprehend air quality reports from our restoration project sites. Improve coordination with partners to collect and display data around the sea. Next slide. So what more can the SSMP do to protect air quality and public health at the sea? Next slide. Number 5, inclusive and sustainable workforce development. The SSMP supports local hiring or targeted hiring for projects, prioritizing local contractors using local materials where possible. This includes locally sourced plants and seeds, irrigation parts, and other materials sourced from the region. Current vegetation enhancement projects are being implemented using local contractor. Our current SCH, Species Conservation Habitat, Aquatic Habitat Project, uses skilled trades, with most originating from the region. The SSMP has prioritized hiring program positions at the Salton Sea region in the last several years. Future opportunities include supporting the development of local curriculum, training, and apprenticeship programs to connect residents in the region to restoration careers within the SSMP. This would include increased coordination and possibly tours with local K-12 schools and college STEM and MESA programs to educate on the types of professions within our program and its restoration efforts, not to mention maintenance and operations, continuing maintenance and operations. Next slide. So what else can the SSMP do to strengthen workforce development within our restoration projects at the sea? Next slide. Number 6, climate action. Currently, the SSMP is planting salt and drought-tolerant native plants at vegetation enhancement project sites. Shade structures and trees are envisioned to provide shade at our species conservation habitat visitor viewing area. The SSMP is continuing to prioritize creating habitat for fish and bird species to adapt to climate change. Future opportunities include identify opportunities to incorporate features that deliver climate benefits into SSMP projects. For example, visitor centers, wildlife viewing areas, or recreational areas that could include shade structures, EV charging stations, and a selection of drought-tolerant native vegetation and plants to increase tree canopy for shade and sequester carbon. And then lastly, continue to rely on best available climate science in our restoration efforts. Next slide. So how can Salton Sea restoration projects be more climate resistant? Next slide. So the last two, number 7 is expanded transportation and expanded transportation access. And number 8, broadband access for all communities. These two needs, while extremely important, fall mostly out of the SSMP's restoration efforts. However, we're trying to identify areas where we can add conduit and other infrastructure at our restoration sites to accommodate future installations of EV stations and other potential features which align closely with the Dig-Wins policy outlined in the Community Needs Report by Better World Group. There may be a potential to add expanded roads, trails, bike paths, and to future near and long-term restoration projects at the sea, as seen in the rendering here from our long-range plan. We welcome future opportunities to coordinate with local agencies to explore integration of construction activities at restoration projects, with parallel activities being carried out by local entities to improve broadband and or transportation infrastructure. Next slide. So what transportation opportunities would you like to see incorporated into SSMP restoration projects and where? Next slide. How is broadband access important in engaging with the SSMP? And how can restoration projects support broadband expansion? Next slide. So what's the ask? Did we capture everything important to you? What should we be prioritizing as part of our SSMP future actions within our restoration projects? Next slide. And that concludes my presentation. I'll turn it over to Miguel.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for you, Mario, and thank you, Cecilia, for this presentations. If we can go to the next slide, please. Remember that the Q&A function is enabled. If you want to submit your questions there, we're also going to be opening up for public comments. At this point, we have about a little less than half hour for this comment period. So feel free to raise your hand and we'll call out names and get you off mute as we see them coming in. And we will get some of the questions that are coming in through the chat box. Some of them will be answered on a written form, but also we'll get some of those float around with the team so we can get a verbal response as well. Okay, and I do see that we have one question in regards to the dust suppression projects. Maybe Mario can give me a hand here. The question reads, what material is being used for dust suppression?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, we have in our 10-year plan, we're implementing restoration projects on 29,800 acres around the sea. Half of those are dust suppression projects, and the other half are aquatic restoration projects. or aquatic habitat project. Both of those projects suppress dust in different ways. Currently, we're implementing vegetation enhancement projects where we're establishing plants on the playa and near the sea and some of the most I guess emissive areas near communities with two phases. Phase one is adding straw and grass bales to interimly suppress dust. And in between those, we're planting native salt tolerant plants and establishing or protecting those plants with those bales and establishing native plants on the playa to suppress dust. And then the way the habitat projects works is we're building ponds around the Salton Sea at for example, our species conservation habitat project, which is 4,100 acres. We're establishing a series of ponds from shallow to deep ponds that will provide aquatic and or habitat benefits for birds and fish. And when we wet those projects, that's also suppressing dust on site. So it's two ways. It's through vegetation and establishing vegetation near the sea, and creating these habitat projects that are wetted to keep dust down near communities.
Great, thank you, Mario. And I just want to remind you all that these documents are out for public comment. You can submit those via email through or contact the Salton Sea contact email, which is cnra-saltonsea resources.ca.gov. But also today's comments are also going to be part of the public comment log that we keep for this documents. If you haven't had the chance to read these documents, you can find those at our website and see if we can post a link on the chat where you can locate those reports. You still have about 10, 11 days to submit your comments. The comment period ends on March 26th. So we'll welcome all of your comments for both reports, for the Better Work Group report and the Salton Sea Management Program and Community Needs report. So okay, looking for more raised hands. If you guys have any comments, any questions you want the team to address, this is a time for you to make your comment and help us enhance the reports.
I think if we go through to slide 7 and cycle through the questions, that might be helpful.
Yeah, maybe should we go back to what is it, slide number 13, 14 maybe, on community engagement. Okay, and I do see that the links are being posted on the chat for both documents and for both languages. The documents are available both English and Spanish for you to read. And there's also information on how to submit if you also want to do a regular mail letter. So
Gail, I see one more question in the Q&A. That would be a good one for Mario to talk about in terms of workforce.
Yes, and I'll read it out loud. The question is from Ms. Tina Castillo. Will there be any monetary support for local small businesses for community members to earn a living in their area by starting a small business?
Yeah, I mean, I think from the funds that we're using within restoration, I think those are earmarked specifically for restoration. However, you know, depending on the small business or what the business is, you know, if it's relating to some of the restoration actions that we're doing, yeah, potentially. I know that we're, you know, using local contractors and subcontractors to implement these projects, as well as, you know, using some of the local companies to, you know, purchase supplies for these companies. So it really depends on the type of small business, I guess. But I do know that, especially near our project sites, we have quite a bit of the, you know, construction workers on our project sites. And at, you know, at the Species Conservation Habitat Project, I think we had over, you know, 100 to 130, you know, skilled trades workers and construction workers at one time at the peak of construction. And I know we hear from local businesses that, you know, that they're seeing a lot of our you know, our workforce from these projects out in the local communities, especially in Salton City, where we're doing our vegetation enhancement projects. You know, many of the workers, construction workers out there implementing these projects, and then even moving into monitoring these projects, go out and, you know, they'll go out and, you know, eat at local establishments. And I know that some of them, especially those who come in from out of the region, will stay in local hotels and you know, go to, you know, all the local establishments, you know, near the, I guess, the northern end of the Imperial Valley and you know, southern Coachella Valley. But that's as close to the relation I can, you know, think of for that specific question. So it depends on the type of small business, but I know that there are, you know, certainly effects and there's certainly support for, you know, for local businesses to our restoration projects.
Thank you, Mario. So yeah, what we're aiming to get from this exercise here, or listen from you, you know, how the restoration work that the Salton Management Program is undertaking, if it's you know, the current projects that we have going on, like the Species Conservation Habitat Project or the Vegetation Enhancement Project that Mario touched on, and all the other projects that are part of the 10-year plan, how we can make those meet within our work and within the restoration efforts that we're doing, how we can meet those community needs that we've been identified. I mean, we have the reports lay out a good list of what we're currently doing to address that, and the opportunities that we have for future, you know, addressing of those needs. You know, on the slide that we're on, what else or what more can the SSMP do to protect our quality and public health? I just wanted to, you know, point out a few of the pictures that we got here on the screen. You see those colored flags. That's an air notification program, the school flag program. That's in a way that's actually led by our partners, the Comité Cívico del Valle. So that's primarily an awareness program for folks to or the schools and students to be aware of the air quality. So that's the way that the program is currently addressing public health, you know, within its realm of, or perhaps jurisdiction, how we can go about protecting public health. So that's just an example of what we're currently doing, but it doesn't mean that there are other opportunities. So what we want to get from you, it's what else can we do as a Salton Management Program to address public health in this case. And then we have this 7 other needs that Mario explained during his presentation that we also want to enhance. We also want to do more work within our restoration work at the sea. Okay, just a reminder, you can raise your hand if you wish to make a comment. Raise your hand button. It's at the bottom of your screen, and give us your comments. Okay, and I think if I don't see any more questions coming in or any raised hands, we do have a quick activity for you all. It would be great if you can participate with us. That will really help, get your feedback, not only on today's meeting, but also additional feedback on the report, and also how we can keep improving our public engagement, how we can keep improving the way we do outreach. So at this point, I'd like to, before we close, I would like to have Josh help us in leading the next activity. And for those that are still on the line with us, if you can get your phones out or click the link so we can get this exercise going.
Hi, everyone. Josh Zipperman with Berkricks Communications. Thank you all so much for joining us. Got a quick survey here on Menti that we'd like everyone to participate in. This is just going to help us understand how you learned about today's meeting and give us some feedback on the meeting itself. So I'll give everyone a minute, if you can, to scan the QR code on the screen or go to the link shown here and click in the code, and then we'll get started. So the first question that we have, just kind of an icebreaker question, is what city do you live in? So we see Raleigh, El Centro, Imperial, Palm Desert, Chino. We'll give it a few seconds for everyone else. Calexico. This is great. It looks like we got a wide range of folks here today. All right, so with that, I'm going to move on to the next question. So the question is, do you feel that you gained valuable information at today's meeting? So it looks like we've got quite a few responses between strongly agree and agree. So that's great. Thank you guys so much. With that, we're going to go to the next question. Question is, would you like to receive information for future SSMP engagement opportunities? And this can include anything from a tour of one of our projects to having us speak at a community meeting, at a council meeting, information regarding one of our workshops or community meetings, anything along those lines. If you'd like to receive information or send us some information for us to attend, we'd like to hear from you. So looks like we got a lot of responses on that. So thank you so much. Then the next question is, how did you find out about this meeting? And this really helps us understand how we can better reach you and what's effective here. You're able to select multiple options. So if you heard about this meeting through various different channels, please let us know. So we have the SSMP newsletter, we have flyers that were distributed throughout the communities, social media posts and events and toolkits that were shared with partners. We have the television PSA, we have Spanish radio, we have a newspaper ad or two that we did, and then we have word of mouth. And for everyone that's selecting word of mouth, if you have any indications as to how the folks that you heard this from may have heard about this meeting, put those down as well for us so that we can capture the full picture, if you will.
Hey, Josh, I will mention that the SSMP newsletter is a good way to find out about our program and things that we have going on, community meetings. So if you haven't signed up, if you want to go to our webpage, which is in the chat, or I don't know, Miguel, if maybe you could post a direct link on how they can sign up for the SSMP newsletter. That's a great way to stay connected to our program and everything going on related to the Salton Sea.
Yep, that's a great point, Mario. And after this quick Menti, I'll bring back up the presentation. We have a quick slide with that information on it as well for everyone. So with that, I think there's one more question. And so the last question pertains to the report itself. Do you feel this report, the SSMP report, helps uplift your community needs? So I'll give everyone a few seconds to put in their answer. Okay, so thank you guys so much. That brings us to the end of the survey. And with that, I'm going to switch back to the PowerPoint really quickly. And thank you, Greg. We go to the next slide. Perfect. I'll turn it back over to Miguel.
Great. So with that, we conclude our meeting for today. I appreciate you all for participating. Remember that a public comment period ends on March 26th. You can send us your comments via email at the email you see on your screen. Also, Mario mentioned the Salton Sea newsletter that goes out on a monthly basis. We're also going to be posting that on the chat, and you can find that link, or you can register and subscribe to the listserv on our website, which is the saltonsea.ca.gov website. And that's where you can sign up and get the latest news on Salton Sea. If it's updates on our projects, if it's documents we got going out, just like the community needs report, upcoming engagement opportunities, if it's a meeting either hosted by the Salton Sea Management Program or by its partners, we try to get those out there through the newsletter. Also, a little bit of sneak peek of our social media and what we got going on at CNRA. So I suggest if you haven't subscribed to that listserv, you can do that on the Salton Sea website. So before we close, I'd just like to put it back to my colleague Mario or Sam for any closing thoughts.
Thanks everyone for joining. We really appreciate you being here, and also want to recognize the folks who helped contribute information and uplift their needs in these reports. That was essential for us to learn and think about how our restoration projects can provide multiple benefits. So we look forward to your feedback on March 26th. Thanks so much for being here, and have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you all.
Great. Thank you all. See you soon.